All right, good evening, everybody. It's Aaron T. Aaron, and I want to say a big welcome to you for joining me again for this second week session of Power Principle. Like I shared last week, I'm committed to showing up here every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. UK GMT. Every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. UK GMT, and I'm going to share something that I think would help us in how we grow to be very intentional in living a successful and rewarding life. And I do know it will be a blessing for you. Oh, hi, blessing, all the way from Nigeria. So if you haven't subscribed, people, why don't you just click on the subscribe button right now, and then go to that notification bell. Go to the notification bell and click the all notifications so that you will know when next I'm live. But guess what? I am committed. I've tried to create some time in my schedule to ensure that I can show up at least every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. UK time, and for to share a lesson or share something that I think will be most beneficial for us as we begin to get out of this pandemic and get out of this exit, but also prepare to ensure that we live a successful and rewarding life. And today, um, I want to talk about this second lesson. Last week we talked about understanding, but this second lesson, I want to talk about a principle, the role of honesty in living a successful and rewarding life. The role of honesty in living a successful and rewarding life. So feel free to share this YouTube page. Let's get as many people. Just take the link and just share it to your WhatsApp groups, to your many groups that you're on, to Facebook groups and the likes. And let's get as many people in on the conversation. We're looking at power principle number 2, and we're looking at the role of honesty in living a successful and rewarding life. You can type that out, the role of honesty in living a successful and rewarding life. And if you do hear something that resonates with you, something that I say that possibly touches you, or means something, why don't you just write it so that we can highlight it? This is not really, you could send in questions and all that, and I would always reach back out to respond to them. But this Thursday sessions is a half an hour where I just come and just share what's on my thoughts, what's on my mind to discuss this Thursday. And I'm sure you're going to learn something, you're going to get something. So today, once again, we're looking at the role of honesty in living a successful and rewarding life. The role of honesty in living a successful and rewarding life. And we're looking at power principle number 2. I've got 10 of them I'm going to be sharing. Last week was understanding. Today is the role of honesty in living a successful and rewarding life. Now, guess what? From childhood, you and I, we've always been in situations where we've had to make choices about whether to behave honestly or to be less than truthful, right? And as children, these may have ranged from taking change from your mother's pocket, your mother's purse, your daddy's wallet, or to lying to spare yourself of punishment, right? And as adults, we may have fibbed, to spare someone's feelings, or deducted a little bit more than we were entitled to on our tax returns, on your CV, all that stuff. While we tend to give a lot of lip service to honesty, the daily news has shown us, for example, that a growing number of young people, think that it's okay to cheat in school. More drivers, including myself, would regularly exceed the speed limit by more than 10 miles an hour or something like that. And many people really do buy into this idea, and that hardly any parents will think it wrong to buy a child's movie ticket for a preteen. And what's more, these kinds of what we've tagged as minor transgressions, they are done without any remorse. That's what we find these days. So what happens is that we tend to justify and rationalize our actions. We tend to justify and rationalize our action because everybody's doing it. Because everybody's doing it, it's really not hurting anyone, right? Is anyone with me? You say, because everyone is doing it, it's really not hurting anyone. In fact, the reality is this might actually be the worst type of dishonesty. Not to recognize the absolute nature of honesty in itself. You know, to be operating on the assumption that there are different standards of honesty. Is someone following me? For us to be operating on this assumption that there are different stages or different strands or different standards of honesty, what happens is that we then end up cheating our own personal integrity. I'm going to teach a lesson very soon. I'm working on at the moment that talks about taking your power back. But then let me just go here for now. We end up cheating our own personal integrity that lies innately within us. We are draining our personal power and cheating ourselves. The principle of honesty has depth like an ocean. The principle of honesty has depth like an ocean, and it must be properly understood. Honesty must be properly understood and internalized before we can really move meaningfully onto the other principles for success. Although we're often exposed to examples of dishonesty in media, in society as a whole, it has long celebrated honesty virtues. For instance, who hasn't heard the line that honesty is the best policy? We all have heard that line. Everyone knows that honesty is the best policy. Great writers have often written and spoken about the virtue of honesty as well. And I want to explore, you and I today, I want us to explore this fundamental virtue a little deeper, not as a behavior, but as possibly a personal attribute. You see, honesty is a lot more than not lying. Honesty is a lot more than not speaking on truths. You know, honesty is a lot more than all those things. Yeah, we do cheat our integrity when we think that there are levels of honesty. You see, these things represent honesty's most conventional and superficial layer. We've blurred the lines, you know, and for me, honesty is far richer than this. Honesty for me is a way to be with yourself, with your intentions, and with others. Honesty is a way to be with yourself, with your intentions, and with others. If you get that, you can just write that. Honesty is a way to be with yourself, with your intentions, and with others. Core honesty has deep roots and a direct correlation to the results in your life. Core honesty it has its deep roots and a direct correlation to the results you're seeing in your life right now. Check it. Without honesty, nothing can exist. Without honesty, nothing can exist. In fact, nothing can exist properly and nothing can be sustained without honesty. There's no foundation of it, right? But when we live according to or within the principle of honesty, what happens is our power multiplies. So let's look more fully at what honesty means and what it doesn't. What honesty means and what it doesn't. So we can define honesty as the quality of being truthful and sincere, of being morally correct or virtuous, or being free of deceit or being genuine. So we define honesty as the quality of being truthful, being sincere, being morally correct, virtuous, of being free of deceit, and being genuine. Yet there is also such a thing as brutal honesty. Yeah, you hear people say you are brutally honest, and sometimes we're brutally honest in a way that needlessly hurts other people. I raise my hands, raise my hands. I definitely one of those people. But we have to be careful how we're brutally honest such that it doesn't hurt, needlessly hurt other people. And I think all of us understand this kind of abrasiveness and do our best not to hurt the feelings of others. We can still seek honesty. We can still seek honesty that is in keeping with our own higher awareness. We can still seek honesty, keeping in our own higher awareness and reality, but it's also kind and not unnecessarily harsh. Honesty can be kind and not unnecessarily harsh. Honesty is not an excuse to say or do things that should not be said or done. Honesty is not an excuse to do things or say things that should not be said or do things that should not be done. And it should never be, being honest should never be a justification to be abrasive, to be tactless, to be harsh, to be rude. No. So to move forward in our lives, we must have the awareness and be in harmony with honesty. So we must have that awareness, and to be in one harmony within ourselves, in our lives, with honesty. And unfortunately, dishonesty is everywhere in our society. Dishonesty is everywhere in our society, and one of its most common forms is often found within an individual. Within an individual, that's the most common forms of honesty. There's a story I was following on social media this week, but I'm not going to get into that. An example of this type of dishonesty is addiction. It could be of drugs, it could be of alcohol, it could be of sex, it could be of hoarding, it could be shopping, food, you name it. And as you probably know, the first step to overcoming any addiction is to give up the denial. The first step to overcoming any addiction is to first give up the denial, give up the self-deceit. Because when a person begins to view themselves and their actions and consequences honestly, that's the first step of change. When a person begins to view themselves, to view their actions, to view their consequences honestly, then that's first step in change. Only once a person admits that there is a problem, then is it possible for them to see a way. We can all blame the pandemic for why many of us are adding extra weight and things like that, including myself. I've blamed it on the pandemic. But hey, am I really being honest with myself? So only once I can admit. So I've had to get myself a personal trainer at the moment. The moment I was able to admit to myself that, look, you are adding a lot of, then there is a problem. Then there's a problem to solve. Because only once you have admitted that there is a problem, only then, when you have that self-awareness that there is a problem, then that is when it is possible for you to see a way, to see an authentic way of living. And then you can then start the healing that is required to grow. I hope this is helping. So see, letting go can be as much a part of honesty as forthcoming, because honesty is a systematic examination. It's a systematic examination and embracing of. It's an embracing of the truth. In developing honesty, you have to embrace the truth. You have to embrace the truth within yourself. In developing honesty within yourself, you can become aware of who you truly are. The who you are when nobody's looking. So let's start there. Who are you truly when no one is looking? When you come to terms and embrace the who you are when no one is looking, it is being willing to be open with yourself, to be transparent, to be vulnerable, and leave from that place and be straightforward and truthful. Be straightforward and truthful with yourself. Now, check this. I'm not talking about external. I'm talking about honesty first with ourselves. Are you transparent? Are you willing to be open to yourself? Are you willing to be vulnerable with yourself? Are you willing to live from that place of openness and vulnerability and truthfulness with yourself? When you are not living up to your own standard of integrity that you have set for yourself, then you're not living honest lives. When you are not living to your own standard of integrity that you have set for yourself, you said you were going to get some things done this week. When you are not living to your own standard that you have set for yourselves, then you're not yet living honest lives. We must be honest and value honesty with ourselves before we can be honest with others, and before we can begin to identify our true intentions and goals. So honesty allows you to be authentic. Honesty allows me to be authentic, allows you to be authentic. It requires the courage and the willingness to look at yourself and not pull any punches in terms of who it is you are. Just accept yourself that, wow, this is really how I'm showing up. So it is, who is it you are and who it is you need to be. So you need to be able to look at yourself where you are now and say, you know what, this is how I'm showing up. So who do I need to be, what it is that you want in your life. So you need to be at that place and look at yourself and ask yourself, who is it that I need to be? Who is it that I need to be in order to do what it is that you want to show up in your life? So once we've taken these first steps, which is often the hardest steps, guys, it's often the hardest steps. And it's often that hardest step towards self-honesty. We can then begin to take the other necessary steps to move us forward, towards our goals and towards being honest with others. The quickest way to develop impeccable honesty with others is to always keep your word. Did somebody get that? The quickest way to develop impeccable honesty with others is to always keep your word. Always keep your word. You see what? It sounds so simple, doesn't it? Yet all around us, we lie to ourselves, lies are being told, and lies are being lived into every aspect of our lives. And political, we see it in political figures, we see it with business leaders, we see it with athletes, right? We see it with coaches, we see it with speakers, we see it with entertainers, we see it sadly even with our religious organizations. And what you find out is in each instance, there is a price to be paid beyond just the individuals involved. Beyond just the individuals involved, there's always a price to be paid. In the Bible, I'm a man of faith, I'm a person of faith. In the Holy Bible, the Apostle Paul charged Timothy that first of all, he says, all prayers and giving of thanks be made for all men, that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness. And the next one, check it, honesty. That we may live a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. So see, he considered it, this was Paul, he considered it one of the highest of goals to live is to live an honest life. So now we've seen the contrast of our lives not lived honestly. And they are far from godly or peaceable. So the trademark of a life lived without honesty is, check this, unsettled, unsatisfied, frantic existence. That's the trademark of a life that is lived without honesty. So much energy goes into maintaining that fabricated persona, right? So much energy goes into it, because once you're dishonest, you have to maintain it. So much energy goes into maintaining that fabricated persona that it truly does, you know what, drains one's spirit. It truly does drains one's spirit. And while there are dishonest people who appear to be quite prosperous, okay, there are dishonest people who appear to be quite prosperous. Guess what? They will never experience the peace or unstoppable force of impeccable character. If you want to be effective in creating the life that you envision, if you're listening to me, if you really want to be effective in creating the life that you envision and that you actually do deserve, you would innovate other people. You need people to be successful, guys. You need people to be successful. So it's important. Living and speaking from a place of impeccable honesty will gain you the respect and admiration from people that that is needed to influence others. If you want to be a person of influence, you have to be somebody who's operating from a place of honesty. In short, consider this. The result that you and I are experiencing in our lives right now is in direct proportion to the honesty which others perceive in us. Think about that for a second. The results that you are experiencing in your lives right now, that I'm experiencing in my life right now, is in direct proportion to the honesty which others perceive in us. Something I have found helpful as a tool has been to always ask myself these three questions. And I hope you can write this and learn from this. These three questions I ask myself. It's a tool I'm using and working on. As a tool, I'm using it to ask myself these three questions regularly when communicating with others. Number one is this: did I fully and honestly communicate what I really needed to say to this person? Number one, did I fully and honestly communicate what I really needed to say to this person? Number one, I'll say that again. Did I fully and honestly communicate what I really needed to say to the person I'm speaking to? Number two, did I hold back in any way? Did I hold, as a coach, as a speaker, especially as a coach, I have a lot of clients who will tell me great things and all that. And sometimes you want to be careful what you tell them. So most times I'm having to ask myself, did I find myself holding back in any way? And if so, was there something that I could have said to address my points more honestly? And number three is, was I so preoccupied with how the other person might react that I edited my communication to something that was less than honest? Was I tell people, you want to do all you can never to work from a place of restriction. So number three, was I so preoccupied with how the other person might react that I edited my communication to something that was less than honest? So, we all want to make sure that we're friendly, and that's good, and tactful when we express ourselves. But we need to be authentically honest. There's a difference between being authentically honest and being brutally honest. What a lot of people try to do is being brutally honest and not thinking of the feelings or emotions of others. But you can be authentically honest without giving offense. You can be authentically honest without giving offense. So I have found that to be honest with yourself, to be honest with oneself, it then continues with honesty with others, and then by extension, honesty with your intentions and your actions. So there's honesty with yourself, there is honesty with others, but now most importantly, are you honest with your intentions and your actions? Are you honest with your intentions and your actions? Are you honest with your intentions and your actions? When what you say and do correlates with what you think and who you are at your core, intentions and actions, when what you say and do correlates with who you think, what you think, and who you are at your very core, it is said that you are now congruent, you are in alignment, that you are living, you are being and doing on the outside in a way that is congruent, that is matching what's happening on the inside. I hope this is not too deep. No, this can be deep. So in other words, you must do what you said you would do. Guys, you and I must do what we say we would do in the way that you said that you would do it. You must do what you said you would do in the way that you said you would do it. Simple. Are you honest with your intentions? Are you honest with your actions? So when I'm examining how congruent I am with my words, when I'm examining how congruent I am with my words, not just my words, I need to examine how congruent am I with my thoughts, how congruent am I with my intentions, how congruent am I with my actions. So I ask myself some questions. Are my actions in alignment with, and do they follow what I've stated my intentions to be? Are my actions in alignment with, and do they follow what I've stated my intentions to be? Am I acting in the most effective way possible to achieve the things I've said I want to achieve? Am I? I just asked my clients a question in a WhatsApp group. I said, what you're working on right now, are they matching what you want? Or are you wasting your time? So am I acting in the most effective way possible? Have I given my best today to achieve my intentions? Does my intentions mark my actions? Intentionality is one of the most abused words. Everybody will tell you, I'm being intentional. But intentionality is really about good actions. Are my good actions actually matching my intentionality? My desire to be intentional. Are my good actions, are my actions matching it? Am I resisting what needs to be done? Questions I ask myself. Am I resisting what needs to be done? Because if I'm resisting, I want to ask myself, why am I resisting? Most times we don't want to get into certain knowledge, especially as people, Christian or people of faith. There's just some things we don't even get into. But you have to ask yourself, why am I resisting? And I want to ask myself, why am I resisting? Why am I resisting? Is there any incongruence between what needs to be done? Is there any incongruence between what needs to be done? What needs to be done? You keep hearing me say this. Is there an incongruence between what needs to be done and my beliefs? What needs to be done and my values? What needs to be done with my beliefs, my values, my aspirations, my beliefs, my values? Am I being fully honest with myself in regards to my intentions, my goals, and my vision? Questions for everybody. Am I being fully honest with myself in regards to my intentions, to my goals, and to my visions? Am I being really honest with myself? Have I given my best shot today? Anyone who's watching me would think I love social media and I love YouTube and all that. No, I actually don't. I actually don't like showing up on these live streams and things. But if I'm going to get to the target, if I'm going to get to where I'm going to go, one of the key things I must do is show up and be visible. So I have to ask myself, am I taking the right actions that would help me be visible? Am I congruent with the things I need to do? So I may not love to do this, but how is that stacking up with my intentions? Am I taking the good actions? I hope this helps anyway. Let me not go into that. So I want to share something I've learned in my personal development journey. And one of those tough lessons that required, what one of my mentors would call a checkup from the neck up. At one point, my mentor said to me, if you aren't living exactly the life, if you aren't living exactly the life you like, then be open to consider that maybe you are living your life less than honestly. I'll say that again. If you are not living exactly the life that you like right now, then I want you to be open to consider that maybe you are living your life less than honestly. Think about that. He said, be open. He told me, he said, be open to the consideration. And I want to say that to you all. Are you open to the consideration that if you're not living the life exactly as you want it, if you're not living your life exactly as you want it right now, that maybe you're living a life that is less than honest? If you're not getting the results that you would like to see in your life right now, just maybe be open to the consideration that if you're not living the life exactly as you want it, just maybe you're living a life that's less than honest. And of course, I wasn't really happy about the idea when he said it to me. I wasn't intentionally living my life dishonestly, but I had to remember what he said. He said, be open to the consideration. And I'm saying that to you all, be open to the consideration. And I spent several weeks considering the point, because I truly respected him and I truly saw the results that he had in his life. And I wanted to make every effort to live, and I still want to make every effort to live a very honest life. But you know what? I also have to admit, that my results spoke for themselves. Guys, your results are speaking for you. My results spoke for themselves. And that wasn't the end of the lesson. He said to me something even more powerful. He said, after you've considered that, that's the moment right then that you can start living a completely new life. You can now start a completely new life journey. You can begin to live your life at a completely different level. See, you would soon notice, as I did and still constantly contemplating with those questions, you will soon notice that the ongoing practice of honesty with yourself, especially practice of honesty in all aspects of your lives, will transform you and I to the very core. So you see, when we stay in our comfort zones, when we stay in our comfort zones, when we don't fully acknowledge our real hopes, when we don't fully acknowledge our real dreams, when we settle, when we become afraid to claim all the good that we really want from life, that we really want in our lives, when we are afraid to step out and be counted, when we're afraid to be all that we've been called to be, when we're afraid to claim all the good that we really want in our lives, when we refuse to step out to do that, can I suggest that, well, maybe we're being dishonest with ourselves. And that's exactly what I was doing. So I wanted much more. And I'm sure that's the same with you, but I doubted my abilities. I want more, but I doubt my abilities. In fact, most of you listening to me, you actually doubt your worthiness to have what it is that you want from life. And many of us, that's the case. So can I suggest that many of us are living dishonest lives by not really being intentional to go for what we really want from life? That's it. We're living dishonest lives. So many of us are doubting our worthiness, to have what it is that we say we want. You say you want something, but you're not actually believing in it. You don't think you're worthy of it. You're not being honest with your desires. So when you find out that you're not even being honest with your desires, so you don't have to face your fears and doubts head on. That's it. Les Brown once said, at times we're as honest as we can afford to be, and as dishonest as we have to be with ourselves. And I can't think of a simpler way to express it. Now, what he also means by that is not just with ourselves, but in the relationships we've also created, in which we know we cannot afford to be honest. Whether we fear judgment or punishment or something else, whether we fear it either way, internally or in our relationships, if we allow the dishonesty to have control, if we shortchange ourselves, you know what? We rob ourselves of the feedback that we need to take corrective action. So without our feedback, we cannot grow to the next level. So don't be afraid of feedback. And guess what? When we don't take that feedback very well, we stagnate in those toxic situations and we get stuck. And guess what? Stuck stinks. So imagine looking back at your life 3 years from today, for everyone who's listening and everyone who will listen later. Imagine looking at your life 3 years from today, knowing that you've lived a life of impeccable honesty with yourself, with others, with your hopes and your dreams. What would that life look like? What would that life look like? Imagine it now as a life in which you've manifested your deepest, your truest, your honest self, your true desires, that you've accomplished the things that really matter to you, that you've developed the strong, resilient, unbreakable bonds and relationships. So see it as a daily practice. Gauge your levels of openness with yourself. Gauge your level of openness with yourself. Gauge your level of openness with others. Gauge your level of openness with your hopes, with your dreams, with your intentions. Gauge your level of openness or vulnerability with your dreams, with your intentions, with your actions throughout the day, and see how your practice of honesty can be deepened. One thing I know is this practice alone will give you access to a greater power and resources that you didn't even know you had, than you ever thought possible. I'm confident that once you and I begin to experiment with this particular principle of honesty, this power principle of honesty, you and I will see how much more waits undeveloped inside of us. And guess what? You'll be energized to grow your life even more. I hope this has been a blessing. I've just looked at my time. I have a lot more to share, but I really want to make this thing half an hour. I hope this has been a blessing. Put some notes in the comment section if it's been a blessing. But more importantly, guys, share this YouTube video. Let everybody catch in on it. Let everybody get to watch it. But please subscribe. Yes, subscribe. And hit the notification bell. I'm going to be here every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. And I'm going to be teaching a principle for as many who want to come hang out with me that I think would be a great blessing. So once again, thanks for listening. This has been Aaron Tieron on the power principle number 2, honesty, the role of honesty in living a rewarding and successful life. One of my mentors will say, hold your image. And one of my other mentors will say, I'm your friend. So I look forward to catching up with you next week. Goodbye, everybody, and have a good evening. Goodbye.